Stop sharing. Oh, there's Curtis. And there's me. So I believe we're live, though, and I think we are live. It seems so. Very good. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, panelists, friends, and thank you so much for coming and being on time. It's great. And so, For the Love of Mystics is a new podcast that Jennifer is hosting, and it's on the platform of Beyond Being Human. And I just wanted to have a brief mention about the genesis of the project before I introduce everyone else. The Beyond Being Human actually started with an angelic encounter several years ago, and I won't talk about that right now, but it changed my life. And some people have called me mystic because of that, or that I am a mystic. And I go, no, no, no. I don't think I can claim that title. But it's interesting. And we can discuss, like, what is it to be a mystic? And why are mystics so great an example for humanity in general, and what can we learn from their direct relationship to the divine? All of those sorts of questions will come up. I probably will stay in the background more or less, but let me pass over to our lovely host, Jennifer, and away we go.
Hello, and welcome to For the Love of Mystics. Thank you so much, Michael. And we definitely want to talk about what it is to be a mystic, what that looks like for us in our experience and our journey. We've got two amazing guests with us today. We've got Melissa Sophia Joy, who is a neuropathic doctor, founder of Somatic Awakening, and the founding director of the Sophia Healing Academy. And we have Curtis Childs with us. He is creator and host of Off the Left Eye and chief visionary officer of the Swedenborg Foundation. And so excited to have you both here. Thank you very much for being with us. Melissa, why don't you give us a little bit about who you are and what is it to be a mystic for you?
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Michael. I'm really excited to be here at the launch of this new podcast. And as Jennifer said, I'm a naturopathic doctor. And so I have a license as a doctor working with all sorts of different holistic modalities and homeopathy and herbs and supplements and all those things. But even before I started my journey as a naturopathic doctor, I've always had the experience, not, let me rephrase that. I've had multiple experiences of the interface between regular human experiences in 3D and making contact with the mystical, having experiences even as a child and as a teenager and as a young adult that really woke me up to there's more going on in this reality than we know. And this started as intuitive awarenesses. And then in my 20s and my 30s and 40s, I actually started having these deep experiences where the divine would either talk to me, awaken inside of me, give me messages, guidance on so many different levels. And this is what we would call the divine, and that could be the divine face of the masculine, God, or the divine face of the feminine, divine mother. Very often it's been Yeshua and Mary Magdalene or others. Even just yesterday, I had a really powerful, tearful, beautiful conversation with Hathor and Isis. So my life is filled with guidance. My life is filled with awarenesses that has changed me at such a deep level. There's no words to even convey it. And from these experiences, not only have I deeply healed on multiple levels, which I'll talk more about that, but also this guidance has awakened inside of me an ancient mystical practice that has now been reformed for modern days. And I utilize it in my practice, and I teach it at Sophia Healing Academy more and more. And I just feel so aligned and fulfilled by these experiences. And I'm really excited to go more into what is most alive here in this conversation today.
Amazing, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey. Curtis, I'd love to hear the same from you. Can you tell me a little bit about what being a mystic means to you and how it unfolded in your path?
Sure. So, I mean, I am somebody I'm not a mystic myself. However, my entire life revolves around mysticism. I'm on YouTube. I've got a channel called Off the Left Eye, which you mentioned, and we have 1,500, 1,600 videos on there that are entirely diving into the experiences of someone who I feel like is the one of the most significant mystics of all time. And certainly somebody, if we have a podcast called For the Love of Mystics, you've got to know about this guy. His name was Emanuel Swedenborg. And it was like if today you had the most famous scientist out there. I don't know, maybe it's Neil deGrasse Tyson or somebody like that. What if they woke up tomorrow and said, everybody, and they did a blog post that I've started to have spiritual experiences, and now I can access the spiritual world as clearly as I access this one. I'm going to spend the rest of my career, the next 30 years, cataloging everything, and I'll let you know. Would you want to read that blog? That's what Swedenborg was. So this was a guy who had his whole world turned upside down, explored the spiritual world for 30 years, and just detail recorded everything. I feel like this is somebody who the world sort of forgot to look at, but everything to do with mystics, to do with spiritual experiences, has either been influenced by Swedenborg or could be influenced by Swedenborg. I find for myself, this is the guiding light in my life. These ideas that he put down, the nature of the way that reality works, has just been my best friend throughout my life. So uh, that's that's the mission that we've been on at my YouTube channel, and what I hope to introduce people to here today is like if you're into mystics, you got to know about this because this is going to round out and enliven and bring a big upgrade to your love for mysticism and your experience of it.
Beautiful. No, it's interesting. You had said about, with Swedenborg and how he had his whole world turned upside down. And that, this journey that came from that for him, that unfolded, that brought out all of these beautiful teachings and all of these beautiful things that we're able to follow. Everybody I know who has had a mystical experience or has been on a mystical journey has had their world turned upside down in one way or another by that experience. And so your comment of, I'm not a mystic, but yet here you are with this mystical experience that has turned your world upside down. I remember reading on your website that this actually did change your life. Can you share a bit
100%.
about that?
I feel like mystics get their world turned upside down. And then for me, what Swedenborg found in his mystical experiences turned my world right side up. Because the world, you can't make sense of your life and your mind and the tragic things that happen in your life and the difficult things you go through. You can't make sense of that without a knowledge of the other side, without the spiritual part of the equation. It's like in the study of the universe, there's this thing called dark matter, and they also have dark energy. And essentially what that is everything we can see here is not enough to explain why planets move like they do and why galaxies spin. There's just not enough mass here. There's not enough energy. So scientists coin this term dark energy because there's got to be something there in order to explain all this, even though we haven't been able to observe it directly. I feel like the spiritual side of life, that's the dark matter or the light matter, whatever you want to call it, of life. Like the things that I've gone through in my life, that my own experience with losing people that I love, with having struggles with mental health, all that, the things that go on in the world, I can't handle that. I can't deal with that. Only when I have this framework that includes life after death and includes a deeper, a bigger plan for things, and includes the love mattering. That's what makes it so I can cope with life. And that was why would I want to go on YouTube and embarrass myself by trying to tell everyone about an 18th century mystic that nobody wants to hear about? It's because this absolutely changed my life. It started when I was having severe depression and anxiety, obsessive compulsive, when I was like 20. That was the only thing. I got really into near-death experiences then as well, which, by the way, Dr. Raymond Moody, who had his book Life After Life, that coined the term near-death experience, had a whole section on Swedenborg in there. How this is the historical parallel. But those experiences and then Swedenborg's and the depth that he got to, that's what lets me not just live day to day, but that's how I find happiness. When I follow the guidelines from the mysticism, I'm happy. When I don't, I'm not happy. Is pretty much that's the equation.
Thank you for sharing that. Melissa, in your experience, because I saw you nodding along here with Curtis, do you feel that that has been part of your unfolding as well?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. For me, as I mentioned before, I've had a lot of experiences early in life of connection like feeling and sensing and knowing the Holy Spirit, for instance. Whenever I was in church as a young girl, actually having an awakening experience with Divine Mother when I spent a summer at a yoga ashram and different things like that. But when I was 30, I had this experience that really was, I would call it a very, very mystical experience, but it wasn't necessarily easy. Definitely not easy at all. The barrier that normally separates us from our past lives, it felt like for me, it got split. And so I started having multiple past life memories that were way beyond my capacity because most of them were trauma filled, right? If we look on our history, right, there's a lot of violence that humanity has been through. And so I started having many experiences of past lives that were so traumatizing that I started having panic attacks. I started feeling really anxious. I was doing everything that I could to really help shift this, everything from initiation work to more meditation to doing homeopathy. And over time, it started getting a little bit better, but then I had this experience in the year 2008 where my life fell apart on a physical level. At that time, my then husband asked for a divorce. I was a director of a local college in a environmental program, consciousness program. The college closed. That's when the financial crash happened. And so it was one thing after another where my life fell apart. But then what happened is that I started going deeper into these memories and it got really dark. And not only past life memories, but memories of this lifetime that had been repressed. And so that was a real turning point for me. And I had to get really, really clear. And even though I was working with a lot of therapists and healers, they would help me stabilize a little bit, but I never really, really felt the deep healing that I longed for until I completely cleared the deck. And I knew on an intuitive level that I had to deeply surrender to the divine. And so I did. And within a couple of months, I had this really bad flu with a very high fever. And in the middle of the night, I was awakened with a vision of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene telling me that it was time for me to remember what I came here to do and then to share with others what I remember. And then within a couple of days, in my meditations, Mary Magdalene started coming to me, teaching me this, what is now called somatic awakening. I had no idea at that point that it was going to be any healing modality. All I knew is that it was deeply transforming the trauma that this body was holding, that was awakening to from thousands of years of trauma that prior to that, I had no idea how to be with, how to have capacity with, was overwhelmed most of the time. And through this process that she showed me, and other ascended masters showed me, Yeshua being one, Mother Mary being another, and on and on and on it goes. There were many different beings that came to me and helped me nuance and articulate what is this and how can I work with it and how can I share it with other people. But ultimately, it completely changed my life. And just like what Curtis said, you know, if I didn't have the experiences that I've had now, not only in the powerful divine connection that we have and how deeply it can heal us and transform us, but also, for instance, understanding what divine safety feels like in the core of my being, understanding, having the experience of divine love always holding me, right? All of these different experiences that I've had has completely helped stabilize me in regard to all the different craziness that's going on in the world. Yes, I still care. Yes, I'm still an activist. Yes, I still give money. I still, all the different things. But at the end of the day, I come back to my lived, felt sense experience of the relationship with the divine inside of me. And that's what has benefited me the most, really. That on top of really starting to understand, live who I really am beyond the ego framework, beyond all of the negative voices, who I really am, and then sharing that with the world so that other people can remember that as well. Yeah, so coming back specifically to your question, every single friend, colleague, acquaintance that I know who is a mystic, they all have their own stories of the breakdown, breakthrough, because we have to understand that we're more than our negative voices, our trauma, our ego stories. And in order for that to happen, we really do need to surrender. So very often, most of the time, we're given some experience that our ego mind can't control, so that we have to fully surrender and open to that divine guidance.
Yeah, what you're sharing resonates deeply with my experience as well. For me, being a mystic means living in direct communion with the deeper truths of existence, right? Experiencing that sacred and the interconnectedness of all things. And what you both have been sharing is very much that, living in the presence of the divine and what that means in our day-to-day experience. So Melissa, you had shared that helps you to get through the issues of today and the things that come up in, say, the news or parts of our daily experience. Curtis, I'd love to hear about your day-to-day experience with this and how connecting to these deeper truths from Swedenborg have helped you to be able to navigate your day-to-day experiences.
Yeah, you would be shocked how often I'm bringing these things to mind. Well, you have a basic program you sort of run to manage your life. You just as you start out and you're a teenager and you're it's sort of the ego materialism program where the best thing in life is how do I get status, attention, affection, whatever your thing you're chasing. How do I stand out or be better or get what I want? And then how do I get money and gratification? And that works for a little while, sort of. It's kind of miserable existence, but then, like Melissa mentioned, you hit things that program can't handle, and you get tired of being miserable and making other people miserable, and feeling like you're running around in a little maze. So that's when you really start to want to be spiritual. I find that when life is easy for me, oh yeah, I'll get around to that, the spiritual truth. But when I'm barely hanging on, that's when that comes alive for me. And by the way, one of the insights that I'll use every day from Swedenborg is that if you want sort of a map or an index of the spiritual side of life and how it all works, you just look at the human body. That is the divine design, and so everything in there can teach you about spiritual things. Like we're talking about here, there's this dark night of the soul Melissa's describing when you need to get broken down to a point where you open up. Well, this morning I was at the gym, and if you're going to be at the gym, and because I turned 40, and I'm just like whew, everything's falling apart. It's like okay, I gotta go start exercising, and what do you have to do to get stronger? You have to do stuff until you can't do it anymore. Ah, I can't, this is too much. And your muscles actually break a bit and then they heal back stronger. Like that's just what it is. That's just what it is to grow. Same thing with spirituality. So, I mean, the two main truths that I'll use from Swedenborg every day, as often as I can remember, is everything's going to be okay, and don't believe everything you think. So everything's going to be okay is a shorthand for what Swedenborg calls divine providence. Divine providence is the guiding of the divine in every little bit of everything. And the intent of that divine is not that nothing is going to hurt right now, but everything is going to turn out okay. Everything is going to turn out well. That the divine can work any situation so that in the end it can add to a state of happiness for you. So I had my own sort of, I got really sick over Christmas break. I lost my voice too. I had laryngitis from it, and given that my job is to talk about things, that's unnerving and just so even there I had a little kind of I'm at the end of my rope here. Uh, but then if you look back on things like that, I can see right away, oh, it just like it clarified things for me. It got me more connected to like good things have come out of that. So you can't usually when you're in the present and something's falling apart, you can't see how this is okay, and your ego doesn't want to believe it. No, I just if this thing just wouldn't happen, then I'd be fine. But what you can do is look back at your life, and there's a lot of the things that I didn't want to have happen or were the worst thing. Not that those things are fine now, but I can see how their spiritual progress came out of it. Like I am the person that I am today. Those things helped me get there. And it's not those things that we're trying. It was the operation of divine providence. So what I'll try to do, even if I'm going to go and do this panel, I don't know. You all are great people. I didn't really know you before I got here. I didn't know how this was going to go or what we were going to talk about. And your ego will want to be, well, am I going to come off well? Are people going to think what I have to say is smart? But if instead I say, well, I hope divine providence will use me as is best for everyone, then you don't feel nervous anymore. That's actually it's sort of a paraphrased quote from my grandfather, who my middle name is his first name. I never met him. He died before I was born, but I was told this story that as he was dying, and everyone was worried about how long is it going to take and what's it going to be like, and he couldn't talk, but he could just write on a piece of paper, and he wrote down, "I hope the Lord will use me as is best for everyone." Uh, that makes you invincible. So if you can believe that, like I don't care if I come out on top or on the bottom or in the middle, if the Lord will use me as his best for everyone, that's great. So that's one of the truths. The other truth is don't believe everything you think. Melissa, you said you're more than your negative thoughts. So I've just spent so much time with negative thoughts in my life. I just was kind of wired that way, and then I had some things happen that were difficult, and a history of mental illness and those things. So I've spent a lot of my life with my own brain just pounding away on me, trying to convince me of miserable, terrifying, demoralizing things. And what Swedenborg opened up is that there's influence for me is there's an influence of the spiritual world on you. So just like I'll give you the short version, but just like right now, when somebody calls me on my phone, most of the time I don't answer that because I know it's a scam. It even says scam likely on my phone. And because I understand the way the world works and I understand that there are people who are trying to rip me off and benefit off of stealing my information and all that, I don't stress at all. I just, nope, I hit that little red button, decline. You can do that with your thoughts too. A lot of that stuff is just like the spiritual version of a scam. All the stuff that's going against trying to tell you that divine providence isn't real, or that love is not going to, take care of you, as it denies the divine safety that Melissa was talking about. That's just people trying to scam you, but like spiritual people trying to scam you, and you can just, I don't need that. That's a lifesaver for me. So those are two that I'll try to use as often as I can as I go about my day.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you. I really love what you just said, Curtis, and so deeply, deeply agree with it. I think you said something like, all the negative voices are like the spiritual perspective of a scam. And I just started laughing and laughing. And I want to actually speak to that more specifically, taking what you said and also bringing in my perspective. And I'm actually getting ready to teach a class in 2 days on this very specific thing. So why don't I just start with that, and then I'll kind of break it down. So I'm getting ready to teach a class called the Liberation Code, rewiring the voice of not good enough, right? And so we have lots and lots of negative voices inside of us, and I have found that the voice of not good enough is paramount, or rampant rather, in Western society. It's something that almost everyone has. And the way that I work with it and the way that I look at it through this experience that was shared from this mystical experiences that I've had, is that we have these voices usually because of the ego. The ego, at some point in time, whatever we experience, it's trying to protect us, usually in a very, very inverted way. And it tells us something negative about ourselves. We could also inherit that from family trauma, family inheritance of negative perspective. We could also bring that in from past lives. And so, for instance, I'll just talk just for a moment about my experience of the not good enough voice, since that's one of those bad spam callers that most of us have at some point in time as we go deep enough. What I've experienced is that usually it's a program. It's not just a voice, it's a program that has many different tentacles and many different avenues. It's there for many different reasons. And in my work, what I have been invited to be the conduit for, and actually, I can't even really call it my work, this work that I am the conduit for. What we're doing is that we're helping people to really come into direct contact with their higher self and the divine in a very specific way. It's not just a thought. And we're not just telling the brain, stop thinking this. What we're doing is that we're actually bringing this holy higher experience of our higher self and the divine down and into the issue, the contraction that most needs our love and our attention. And so, say for instance, we're working with a not good enough voice, what we're going to be doing is bringing that light, that divine mystical experience directly into the nuance, the specificity of that program that is ready to be seen, that is ready to be held, that is ready to be known, and that is ready to open up to divine alchemical transformation. Literally, as these parts of us, these negative beliefs, these somatic contractions, open to trust that the divine is actually here. It's a whole process. It's not just, again, through our linear understanding, it's an actual experience of this opening and the divine making interface with this energy that's fueling the voice. And as that happens, the energy held within that program dissolves. And the more that energy dissolves, the less that program is fueled, the negative voices are fueled. And the more that we have the understanding and the experience of who we really are and this connection with our divinity, and we have less and less and less ego programs fueling our negative voices, the more that we can say, okay, go offline. Because for me, I tried for decades to use positive visualization and positive thinking and no, don't think that, and all the different things they say in manifestation circles. And that negative voice of not good enough, it would just keep on hounding me. Like it was tracking me night and day until finally I turned toward it with this divine energy. And that's what started dissolving it, literally. So this, I just wanted to add that piece because this is a lot that's on my mind, again, because I'm teaching this class in a couple of days. So thank you for bringing that up, Curtis.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Melissa, thank you for sharing about what you're going to be teaching and the class that's coming up. It's amazing when we talk about bringing the divine down into our experience, Melissa, as you said, and what that is to truly embody that within our experience. So often we speak of spiritual path, spiritual journey, what it is to go into this spiritual way of being, and we almost bypass the fact that we're here to also have a physical experience. It is not that we're on this journey to somehow supersede that. We're here, as you said, to bring that in. And so I love how both of you shared about really breaking it down into what it is to live that experience. Now, Michael, you also have had some mystical experiences. Would you share with us how that has impacted your day-to-day?
Well, how's it impacted? Basically, like since the angelic encounter in particular, my whole life has been turned around, totally focused on bringing forth the messages and the urges that seem to come. And I just say yes to it all. And like, okay. And in fact, that's kind of how the mystics topic arose. So over time, the urges and instigation of like explore this. So it started off with angels and extraterrestrials, and don't get me started on that. But it went through a range of other topics, including spirituality, and I actually had ascension listed in there too. And each time a new topic would come into my consciousness, people would arrive. And then other people would be introduced via those people, and it's sort of like consolidated and emphasized, underlined, like this is important, bring this forward. And that primarily has been the mission of Beyond Being Human, from the urging of raise the level of conversation about all of these topics and do the best I can in nurturing our divine spark. Those two things in particular. But just briefly, I won't continue on about Beyond Being Human so much, but the words Beyond Being Human were given to me very, very early, about a month after having that angelic encounter, which was a very energetic thing in itself, not so much telepathy and messages then. Extremely powerful. There's a little interview on my profile page that you can hear more about it. Other words that came later on was open source awakening. And only recently I've made that the main byline for the documentary in particular that we're working on. So Beyond Being Human as a project has been primarily YouTube videos and gathering a community, gathering an amazing bunch of people who are going to be in the documentary, and some not, but generally yes. Incredible kind of thing across all of these different topics. And one thing that I wanted to respond to about like the dark night of the soul, when I had that encounter, I was in a workshop given to me by Robert Kirby. And this is going back nearly 10 years now. And I described it as a broken man to someone recently. And when I look back, like, for me to actually even appear in this sort of a fashion would be totally unthinkable. In the workshops and things, we got to do exercises of getting up in front of 20 people and talking for 5 minutes. my heart would be palpitating, I'd be sweating. And thank God I managed to find Rob Kirby, who took me out of that. And miraculously, this is the way the heavens work, shall we say. Rob has come back into my life after we haven't spoken for over 9 years, and we reconnected, and he's now part of the company of Beyond Being Human. And you'll be hearing a lot more about him because he's an amazing guy and teacher and mentor for me. I might come back and show this page later if you want to pass on, because I feel like I've overstayed my welcome already.
It's all good. It's a beautiful journey, and we all have these experiences that have brought us to different places on the journey. I'd love Curtis to talk a little bit about Swedenborg's theology, because he offers insights into the afterlife and spiritual realms. And I'm just curious, how do these perspectives influence your understanding of human purpose and existence, right? So Michael has shared about how this angelic encounter has really driven this purpose for Beyond Being Human. And I'm curious to hear about your experience with that as well.
Yeah, I love the point that was made, that you made, I think, Jennifer, just a minute ago, that you want to take what's mystical and bring it into something that has broad utility for a lot of people. Something that's really accessible and is about the center of life. I think that's something that people will approach Swedenborg thinking they're going to get something way far out. And you do. Swedenborg had this traveling through the afterlife, talking to people he had known who had died, everything that is bizarre and cool that you could think of. But the conclusions he draws are always very mundane and practical. And there's something that anybody can do right now. Yeah, as soon as while you're watching this video, as soon as you turn off this video, you yourself can be doing the most important things for human purpose in life. So I'll try to give you a summary of that. Yeah, so Swedenborg, he discovered the through seeing how the afterlife works, which the afterlife is just like another layer on top of this life. So you look at the two as a whole. Love matters. What you love matters the most. What you love makes you who you are. And we usually just think of the word love in a positive sense, but you can love bad things too. To be a narcissist is to love yourself so much that you don't care what happens to anyone else. Whereas to love someone else that's what they make every movie about. Right? So there's this finding what's the right love and what's the truth, and letting those things guide you. I think like what Swedenborg does and what his theology has done for me is you're sitting in life and you've just got like a bunch of doors that you can go through. There's all sorts of things you can pursue as what's my guiding principle in life? What am I in this for? Like, what's getting me up in the morning? And what he found, he would go and travel to what he would call heaven and talk to what he would call angels there. And to him, the angels that he talked to, that's people who used to be here, who are now your grandma, who's there, and she's continuing to grow just like we grow here. He talked to angels in heaven, found out what's heaven all about. And heaven fundamentally is the love of being useful. That's what the core of heaven is the joy that you get out of doing things that are useful to other people. He would call that heaven. He would also say there's a hell, and what he would call hell is the joy you get out of harming or exploiting or depriving other people. So heaven and hell are fundamentally states of mind. They're freely chosen by any of us as we go throughout the course of our life. The human destiny, like what we're supposed to do and be, is to get the right priorities on things. So broadly speaking, he talked about what he called the universal categories of love. And there's the love of usefulness, the love of Sometimes it's everything he wrote was in Latin, by the way. That was the language of the educated back in the 1800s. So everything that I'm saying, quoting him, is a translation. But love of usefulness, which he also called love of heaven, either one, same thing. Love of doing what's going to make people happy, what's going to make life better for people, the satisfaction you get knowing you made a difference. That's heaven. Then there's the love of the world. This would be like the means of supporting your own life. There'd be material gratification in there. And then there's love of self. And I wouldn't say he necessarily means that like having okay self-esteem, but more your pride in your own reputation. You're comparing yourself to other people and how do you stand compared to them. To him, the goal is you want to have your love of self for the sake of usefulness and your love of the world for the sake of usefulness. So you can have them all in there, but what's the point? Like, yeah, I'm taking care of myself. I'm patting myself on the back when I need to. I'm treating myself to think. Why, though? It's to get it so I can be in a state where I'm more and more useful. That ultimately there's an end game, which is, yeah, do everything I need to for myself, but because I want to be ready and able to be the best tool in the hand of God to go and make life better. So you have that stuff serving something you can do to be useful to the human race. Do that out of love, primarily because of the good it does, and then secondarily because of the compensation you get and the praise and stuff you get. That stuff could be there, but it's got to be secondary. And then you're living the life of heaven. You live the life of heaven by doing that. And whenever you get some kind of negative impulse to do something that harms someone, try not to do it. Like those are the two essential things about the purpose of life, according to Swedenborg. And that's what he comes back from after traveling through everywhere in the afterlife and seeing these fantastical things and these amazing stuff that goes beyond even his description, his descriptive capabilities. That's what you got to do. You come back and it's like, all right, I'm going to do the dishes. And as I'm doing the dishes, I'm thinking about, I have a wife and a daughter. I'm thinking about the next time they need to eat a meal and there's a clean dish sitting right there and the way the meal's going to, that's usefulness. I come in and do this panel and I'm thinking about there's going to be people on the other side of the screen and hopefully something one of us said in here sticks with them and the next time they're struggling, that idea comes back to them. They get clarity or they get comfort or whatever they need, and that's usefulness. So it takes a lifetime to kind of get you from ego is what matters to that's what's the most important. But ego starts on top, that usefulness starts on the bottom. You flip those, and then you're in the pattern of heaven.
I love that, Curtis. Thank you so much for sharing. And as you said, Swedenborg makes it really easy to digest the message, brings it very much down to earth and our ability to understand. And that idea of usefulness in that way, absolutely loved how you were able to explain that. And the whole thing about bad idea, just don't do that. Brings me back to what you were talking about earlier about the mind and not believing everything that the mind has to say. Being able to be in that place of, I have thoughts, I have feelings. They're not who I am. They don't define me. They don't say anything about me. They're just experiences that show up that I have to figure out how I want to navigate. And I get to choose how I'm going to navigate those experiences.
Can I say, like, just keep a little bit of a record of the truth behind the things that pop into your mind. I'll give you like two examples. Like there's a helpful part of your mind and a not helpful part of your mind. The not helpful part of your mind will always say that it's telling you the truth and it's warning you about things and it's standing up for you, but it's not. And all you got to do is just keep a little score. So I'll give you two examples. One is I was on a trip for work and I was leaving my hotel room and because we had to go somewhere. And as I was leaving, I got this little concern in my head, like you know what, you left your room door unlocked and somebody is going to steal your stuff. You're going to steal your work laptop and all that. And I get thoughts like that all the time. And I was already like halfway down to the car. So what I did instead was I set a little alarm on my phone for 8 that night that said, they said the door was left open. And then I went and had dinner and all that, came back, I'd forgotten about it, and I was back in my room. Nobody'd stole anything. And the alarm went off, and I was like, oh yeah, I didn't need to worry about that thing that my brain was saying I had to worry about. But then, so that's sort of a silly one. But also a couple times recently with people that I've been working with for various reasons, you get ammo in your mind of why you should be upset at this person. And it's like, you know what, that this next meeting or something, they're going to do this. So you better be ready to take them out and do all this and that. And your mind starts to get you really revved up and starts to even helpfully feed you, like, here's what you'll say if they say that, and here's what you'll say. And you go to that meeting, and it turns out that's not what they're going to do, and that's not what they were thinking. And your mind is ready to make a problem where there wasn't a problem. So I'm just saying, just treat it with the same skepticism you treat the fake emails you get. And if somebody comes and starts talking to you and you're like, this is toxic, you just same kind of street smarts on that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. Melissa, with all of this, you're, nodding along and recognizing that this is in alignment. Can you share a little bit about what's coming up for you?
Absolutely. So, again, I really appreciate what you just said, Curtis. And, the way that I perceive it and the way that I teach it is that we have our linear ego mind, right? The chatting away, where the perspective that I like to use is like this part of the mind is best friends with our ego. And then we have the higher consciousness, the higher mind, right? Now, from my perspective and what I teach, there's many different levels of the ego. There's the egotistical nature, like what you were just talking about. And there's all the other negative things that our ego can tell us. And even whenever we're dealing with egotism, like I'm better than everyone, usually what we find is that if we look close enough at that voice, is that the underneath side of it is that they believe that they're not good enough. And that's why there's all this like, I'm better. But whatever it is, when we're working with the ego will move us in a direction of trying to keep us safe because it believes that we're separate. At the very core, that's what it believes, that we're separate identities, and we have to survive at all cost. At the end of the day, at the end of our life, it will eventually fail, but it tries everything that it can, usually in a very inverted way, to move us in the direction of self-centeredness, self-satisfaction, all the different things that it tells us, again, in order to try to keep us safe. And sometimes those are inversions, like I'm not good enough, right? It can be very complicated and very confusing. However, this is the big however, as we come into relationship with the multiple levels of our ego, however we do it, somatic awakening is the way that I do it, specifically dissolving the energy contraction of the trauma or the negative experiences, whatever that is. As that dissolves, then we have more ability to connect to our higher mind. And one of the things that I love the most about seeing people as they come more into relationship with who they truly are and what actually lights them up, we get in connection with our higher mind, we get in connection with our soul purpose, we get in connection with the love that we have in our heart, we get connected to the unification of the divine aspect of who we are, coming into contact with our humanity. And what's so beautiful is this opening the door to, how am I to serve? What does that look like? And every single person, that's different. For one person, it could be, oh my gosh, I need to volunteer, or I need to go teach this, or I need to sit in meditation for an hour a day just to beam love out to the world. And this is one of the things for me, because I'm an activist at heart. I'm also a very spiritual person. And so as we sit with all that's happening in the world, I keep on asking myself, well, what's mine to do right now? Right? Because that's part of that engagement. What is mine to do now? And what is mine to do now might be different in 6 months from now. And so this is part of what's happening for me, is that all of this energy is coming up through me. I have all these teachings coming up, which I'll talk about later, but it's really helping people to get into contact with what's holding them back, the negative voices, the ways in which they actually don't love themselves from that higher perspective, right? From that positive alignment perspective, so that they can then come back into relationship with, okay, what is mine to do now with what's going on in the world, with what's going on in my life, with what's going on in my relationship? What is mine to do now from this highest place, from being a conduit of who we truly are?
And can I just tack something on the end of that? Just because Melissa, when you said uh, ego believes that we're separate, that's the problem, is ego believes that we're separate. Just before this panel started, I was reading Swedenborg upstairs, and he was telling this story of a time he was in heaven, and he was talking with some angels, and those angels were having this discussion forum, and there was higher angels. He talks about different levels of heaven, which is as the human mind opens up, you kind of go up these levels. But there were some higher angels who had posed these questions to the lower angels to see if they could figure out what it was. And one of them was, what is the meaning of the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil from the book of Genesis in the Bible? And what they came back with was that the tree of life is understanding that you live from God or from the divine, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the belief that you're separate. Or they didn't put it in that exact term, but that living from the self, the belief that you're separate. That those are the two ways you can do life, and one of them leads to heaven and happiness, and one of them leads to just problems of all kinds. So I just thought that was cool that you mentioned that. That's Swedenborg would call that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
So if I may, I'll just jump in, because this, I love the fact that you just said that, and I absolutely agree. And the tree of, I think you said good and evil, the tree of good and evil, right? That to me represents the polarities, right? And separation in its essence is the polarities, right? The good and the evil, the light and the dark, the human and the divine, the masculine and the feminine, up and down, all the different polarities that are represented in our experience of 3D and in this time-space continuum, right? And so one of the things that I have been sitting with a lot over the last few weeks, because I had this experience with someone that's like swirling my life, and lots of meditation from that experience, is that even a deeper level of this unification. Who are we really? What does unification actually look like? What does it feel like? And to me, this is what mysticism is actually really leading us to. At the superficial levels, like mysticism is this differentiation between what I'd call theology, an idea that someone is studying, versus the experience of it, right? But then we go into all these deepening experience of what are mystics really being called to do. And at the end of the day, it's this unification, the unification of the human and the divine coming together, being unified. And it's a very awakened state. And for most of us, to be honest, it's a state that we will go into, we will live for a time, however long that is, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, and then we come back and we have the ordinary, regular experience of reality with that imprinted upon us. And then we'll move back into the sense of unification, because this is really where we're all being invited into. And you don't necessarily have to have visions in order to actually move into that level of awakening. I actually worked with a teacher, Adyashanti, for many years, who would say, you know, sometimes when you have visions, that can actually bypass you from the deep experiences of awakening and enlightenment, because then your ego will get involved. So I just want to say that if you don't have, for those of you who are listening to this, if you don't have these visionary experiences, that doesn't mean that you're not a mystic, right? Because really what we're being invited into is this ascension process, this divine unification coming down and into our being, so that we can unify, so that we can understand and remember and live while we're in this body, this unification, the divine, the human coming together, moving beyond polarities.
I am loving this conversation so much. And I know that we're getting close to time for you, Curtis. Just Melissa, to what you were saying, Incension, just, I love that, an idea and what that embodies. Again, being able to really bring it home as opposed to it being something out there. And I want to come back to that. But Curtis, I want to give you an opportunity, since I know we're coming to your time. If there's something else that you'd like to share, if you want to share a little bit about your work, where people can find you, all of that kind of stuff. I know Michael's going to share about Beyond Being Human's page shortly, and we'll share about where they can find you on there as well. But yeah, just any kind of final words.
Sure. My final words are, this was fun. Thank you for having me on the panel. And yeah, I hope that people that are watching find something that makes a difference in your life. And I hope you feel like, oh yeah, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's okay. Everything's gonna be okay. I really do. I really believe that very, very deeply, and I feel pretty confident in it. So you can find my work on, I'm on YouTube. Our channel is called Off the Left Eye. So you can just search Swedenborg or Curtis Childs. You'll find us. There's not that many people doing what we're doing on YouTube, so it's easy to find us. If you want to get connected to us, just leave a comment anywhere on any of the videos, and we'll respond back. You can go to swedenborg.com. That's our not-for-profits website, where you can go and download Swedenborg's books for free. So whatever, if there's any bit of information you feel like would be useful or helpful, we want to help you get there. So any of those things would be a good thing to check out. So keep on pursuing love and wisdom. That's what life is about. Like, how do I find ways, the right things to love and pursue, and how do I find the right ideas by which to live my life? So if you're trying to do those things, you're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. This has been wonderful. Michael, if you would like to share the Beyond Being Human page that has Swedenborg information on there and Curtis's information. And
Yeah, you can see that. Good. Yeah, I actually wanted to say goodbye to Curtis and thank him, but he zapped out, as you do. Anyway, just to let people know what we've got on the website, I was guided, I'll say, to make our first article for Supernal magazine in the Mystics direction about Swedenborg. So you can find this here. It's an article, and it's also on the Supernal magazine, which I'll show you in a minute. But if you go to the Mystics Index, this is very much a work in progress, and clicking that page will take, that banner will take you to that article as well. But down here, we've got a whole list of people, and Jennifer and I yesterday went through, oh, there's this person and this person. So there's going to be a whole lot more listed there. And as you go down, you can click on Swedenborg here and jump right to him and click on that link, and it'll go back to the article and then back to the index. And like, maybe as we go further, Melissa and Jennifer, you're probably way more educated than I am about mystics. Generally, I love hearing about them. I love reading the depths of their experience, and yeah, it's great. So, I mean, I've explored Maya Baba. I did a documentary about him, and spent a couple of months in India doing all of that. So he's more than a mystic, but mystic's good. And it's really interesting when I look back on my life now. William Blake, when I was at school around about 16, I used to go to a little old lady's house, and she was quite a famous presenter and speaker, like she did poetry readings and really explored Blake and showed me all of his paintings and everything. And it's like, as I go through my life now, it's like all of these little clues keep popping up. It's like, wow, that was way back then. Anyway, I'll leave it there. You can explore this page. Each of these that are white means that the page is yet to come with more links and videos and all sorts of different things. I'm going to be building more on Swedenborg. I'm also going to be writing an article about Rudolf Steiner as the next one on Supernal magazine. And other than that, I'd love you all to come to Beyond Being Human website, beyondbeinghuman.org, and just have an exploration of your own there. And just before I disappear, you can see that, sort of. That's the Supernal 50th anniversary magazine. There we go. And again, you can check that out on the Beyond Being Human website, as well as supernalmagazine.com.au, I think it is, or something like that. There's links all over the place. Anyway, this has been fantastic. Let's keep going. I want to hear more. Let's talk about other mystics. And before I go, so I went to a Steiner school, and I was a precocious, rebellious kind of kid. And I remember I wanted to find out, like, who's this Rudolf Steiner guy? And I went to the library, and they had a whole bookcase full of books and things. They wouldn't let kids borrow them. And that, like, what? So I made my own inquiries and whatever. And if you don't know much about Steiner, he was an amazing guy, architect, poet. People call him a genius, and numerous lectures which have now been made into books. Because he was clairvoyant, he had, similar to Swedenborg, the direct vision of, like, wow, this is the spiritual reality. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you again. Carry on.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing. Melissa, I want to dive back into this kind of idea of, we so often we talk about like ascension and ascension symptoms, and people are talking about all these things that are going on because the world is changing and all of that. But this idea of ascension, I want to come back to that, because one of the things that you talked about earlier is you don't have to have had a vision or this kind of particular experience. If something has come in that has given you access to that divine consciousness, we don't have to be mystics, we don't have to be healers, right? So you had mentioned that idea that anybody can access this. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think for the first thing I just want to say is that even the whole concept of ascension symptoms, let's talk about what is that? Well, actually what's happening is that your being in this body is upgrading. You're upgrading to a new awareness. Maybe you've had an awakening experience, or maybe there's a lot of light energy coming through, or an astrological configuration, whatever that is, or solar flares, right? There's so many different ways that we can actually get upgraded in our experience. But ascension symptoms are actually ascension symptoms because you are being affected in your body, right? And even the idea of ascension is, if we were to define that, what a lot of people mean by that is, oh, I'm going to upgrade to some level of higher dimensionality, let's say 5D dimensionality, right? Or, a lot of teachers are saying, no, it's 7D or 13. No, it's 72D, right? There's multiple levels of dimensionality, right? And the definition of ascension is that we raise to a certain level of dimensionality, therefore we won't need to die in this body and move on. Well, yes, I think that is going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know, because when I ask those questions, my linear mind gets in the way. But I think that the big thing to keep in mind here is that That's not really the ultimate goal. I don't believe, I have not been shown, that is not what I've received. Whenever I talk to the masters, whenever I connect to the divine, the ultimate goal is to live in a unified state with the divine inside of us. And when we do that, guess what? We are actually upgrading our body to prepare for that next level. Whether we have, an experience where we don't die, where we just transcend, or whether we do die in this body, when we leave, we're going to be in a much, much, much higher vibrational form because we'll be in unity, right? So this is where we're going. And I'm sorry if I'm popping bubbles for some people, but this is what I've been shown through my own experience. Now, the experience of the divine, the way that I like to articulate that is clairgnosis, right? Clairgnosis is the living, feeling, sensing, intuiting experience of gnosis, which is knowing the divine. And this experience is a pathway, is a process that we can nurture, bringing our awareness into practices that nurture this opens multiple doorways, right? If we say that we're on the path of spirituality, but all we're doing is showing up for festivals and showing up for experiences and showing up for podcasts and maybe occasionally doing a 10-minute meditation here and there, that's only going to get us so far. Our minds will be more open, but we really need to have time where we can simmer and marinate in the connection with our own higher self and the connection with the divine. And so in the work that I do, Somatic Awakening, what I'm actually helping people to do, what I'm facilitating, is to help people activate their experience, not just a thought, but their experience of their higher self and the divine, and then bringing it down into the body. From there, what happens is that the density of our ego structure, the density that we're carrying in our somatic contractions, it dissolves so that, guess what? We have more space to allow this divine energy in, so that there's more embodiment and integration of the divine inside. And then when that happens, then our spiritual anatomy comes more online. Our full heart, our heart body gets activated, our soul's knowing gets activated, and all the different ways that gets activated, so that we're living in a more quantum level, because that's also part of somatic awakening. There's a whole third phase, which is the quantum perspective, that actually helps us integrate and embody and live our awakening and our unity consciousness as we move into it, because that's the unity consciousness is in a very evolved form of spirituality. And from a mystical perspective, it's known as theosis, right? So this is where we're moving toward in that ascension process.
Absolutely. And I love that you were talking about the piece around the body, because there's been so much kind of back and forth about what that means and what that looks like. And like you, in all of what I've been given, it's never been that this body, yes, it will evolve, it will change, it will grow. Maybe we'll be in it longer, as we have been over the decades.
Right.
But we're meant to always go back to oneness. And so this idea of evolving a body of separateness, something that keeps us separate from one another, how does that bring us back into a unity consciousness? Can we do that in that place of separation? And some people will say, yes, we can. And some people will say, no, we can't. And so again, we're looking at that duality idea. Can we evolve as separate beings into oneness? Can our conscious state do that? Can we allow ourselves to do that, even if we're able to feel, there you are and here I am?
Well, my experience of it is that the linear mind won't even really understand. It's like trying to explain to someone who's never had a pear what a pear tastes like, right? The linear mind will automatically try to, quantify it. Is it black? Is it white? Is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Blah, 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 right? But actually, the experience of unity consciousness is an entire path that will continue on and on and on and on and on and on and on, as we're in this body, as we're not in this body, as for those of us who come back, right? It's a whole path of evolution. Every single enlightened, awakened person that I know who's really been able to sustain it, when I've had conversations with them, they're like, it doesn't end. It never ends. There's no ending to this. So even coming to the attempting to answer that question, I'm going to take the humble route and say, I don't know. I just know that it's a path. And that as we evolve, my sense of it is that we're going to spend time in a unified state. And then we're going to come back into form. We're going to spend time in a unified state. We're going to come back into form. And we're just going to have longer and bigger periods of both until our soul is 100% ready to merge, for however long that's going to be. And then we decide, in union with the divine, do we as an identity want to come out and have another round of it, whether it's on Earth or Arcturus or in Lyra or in another galaxy, right? It's just the evolution of our soul. And as Earth beings, we're pretty young. I'll just say that. So there's a lot to learn.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more about this being a path and a journey. And I love that idea of, we're here, we're there, we're here, we're there. We come here when we want to have an experience that is in separation. And I think that that's an important piece for us to remember, is that we are always part of the oneness, whether we know it or not. In our conscious mind, we are always part of that. And yet we come here because we want to have particular experiences that we can only have when we step into an unknowing, so that we can come back to the knowing. And so this is a beautiful evolutionary journey that we're on as we're moving in and out of that place of oneness and then back here. I have in my book that I'm still editing, but will hopefully be out soon, I talk about my life as a Lyran. And the very first part of that is talking about the oneness and being in that energy and what that was like, and what it was for the oneness to decide that it wanted to have experience in this separate consciousness. And yet still knowing at that point that it is part of the oneness, and how that has changed over time so that we get to this point. And then we're going to continue to evolve as we do and have these multiple experiences, because that's what this is all about, as a journey and a path.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you told that story, because I also have an experience of remembering myself as a part of the Seraphim tribe living in Lyra many, 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 many thousands of years ago. And a lot happened. I'm not going to go into the full story. However, I will say that I remember being in the oneness, making that choice. And I believe that that's what makes angels angels. Like, we chose and continually to choose in our free will to be aligned with the oneness, to be the hands, so to speak, and the eyes of the divine in that oneness. And I remember at one point having the desire to master duality. I had the desire. That was the first thing that happened. I had the desire to master duality. I want to be a master of duality. What would that look like? Little did I know exactly how hard that was going to be thrown from this very, very, very high place, and all the things that has happened, from that really high place, and then going down and 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 down. Because to be a master of duality, you need to know the dark. You need to know the dark really well. And so it feels like this lifetime is a lifetime where I'm really being fully catapulted out from where I had been, and really connecting into the light and really coming into this, oh, whoa, what does it actually mean to master duality? And the beautiful thing at this point is that I'm having so many experiences of remembering in the past of being a Lemurian and being a dragon and being an Arcturian and being a Lyra, all these different things where all this information and awareness is not only coming to me at an intellectual level, but it's arising up from my body. And it's super powerful in how it's helping me to stabilize in this higher consciousness. I'll just say I had a healing last week with someone. We're doing a trade, and she's a really high-end healer. And I had recorded, and I was just listening to it over the weekend. And at one point she said, "Now, how are you doing?" And I started laughing in the recording. And then I say something like, "Oh my God, they're showing me," basically they were showing me what it was like to live in this 7D awareness, all ancient parts of me. And in that place, how I was unified. And that's where I'm being invited up. Like, they're like, "We got you. All you have to do is remember from this place. Now live from this place, be a conduit from this place." Whoa. Yeah, I'm even just telling the story, I'm getting goosebumps everywhere.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's true. You talk about being a master of duality, and one of the first thing that comes to my mind is surrender, and how hard that is when we're in this lifetime. What is that to really surrender? And talking about that idea of knowing the dark, and knowing the dark intimately. It's not just knowing the dark and knowing that it exists, but really allowing that deep, intimate relationship with all aspects. I remember talking about past lives, my life as the Lyran. And then I remember saying, I need to be a Draconian. I need to feel what it is to be that other side and having a life as a Draconian. I remember having those experiences and wanting to have both from that higher consciousness level. And so it is such a beautiful thing when we allow ourselves to ebb and flow with the energies and embrace all aspects of what it is to have an experience here. We do begin to surrender, because now, going all the way back to what we were talking about the mind and the stories that the mind makes up, the mind loves to categorize. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is light, this is dark, this is and yet, when we're in that place where we allow ourselves to intimately be connected with all aspects of what we are, there's no more labels. There's no more, this is good for me and this is bad for me. So I just love what you're sharing about that.
Thank you so much. I was just having lunch with a friend on Friday, and very similarly, both of us have had these experiences where she was talking about how she was teaching her students. She was like, right, I used to be a Draco reptilian, and now I'm like living in angelic consciousness. And for me, the experience that I had, again, I'm not going to go too much into it, but the experience that I had is that I was a dragon of light living in the Middle Earth, and our whole focus was to support and nurture the heart of Gaia and humanity. And then the Draco reptilians came in and killed off my clan and took several of us off planet, reprogrammed us, and it was a really horrific journey, as you can imagine, and then dropped us back off at Earth. And all of the lifetimes up to that, it had been hard. I had really touched into some really dark moments, but when I had that memory, it just cracked me open in a really difficult way, and it took years and years and years to heal. And now I can actually share it, because now that it's been healed, now all of these other lifetimes, and not just the understanding of it, but the embodiment of the higher dimensionality and the understanding on a felt lived level is coming back on board and reactivating my angelic wings, just like so many of us are coming back into that unity. Long journey, and now coming back.
Yeah. So much of this experience when we get here is unlearning what the world teaches us. So we go through a process of forgetting, being conditioned to what the world has to say. And then we have to unlearn all of that so that we can come back home to who we are in the oneness and who we are as these beings. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to have those experiences. But as you had said before, not everybody has to have those experiences in order to connect with the divine. And so in your work and in the teaching that you do, what are some things that you teach that would help people navigate towards this transformation if they haven't had these experiences or they don't have access to previous lives that help them to understand their journey?
Absolutely. I definitely believe that not everyone has to have the type of experiences that we're talking about. Most people don't have those experiences. And I'll be honest with you, at least from my perspective, I don't know if you would agree with this, Jennifer, is that I wouldn't wish this on anyone. I mean, it has absolutely transformed my life. And what I live and work now is completely connected to it. But it has not been easy, not at all. So what I would say for everyone is there are a few primary things that I really like to help people understand. Number one, and this is the first thing that we do whenever we're working with the core of somatic awakening, which I call the practice, is that we ground into the earth. Our nervous system is under attack most of the day. If we're watching news, if we're around people who are negative, if we're stressed out because of our job, with the anxiety and the worry, right? Our nervous system can be under attack. So learning how to ground, get out in the earth, whether it's a grounding meditation or you're out in the earth, take your shoes off, connect to the earth. She literally will ground our nervous system, just like whenever we have an electrical outlet, it needs to have a grounding focus, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is to connect to your higher consciousness, right? What we call our spirit. This is an intimate part of who we are. This is part of who we are. Most people forget that. And they'll only come into contact with it, whether they're, you know, in a spiritual experience, or whether that's a church or a meditation or whatever that is, right? But we have this connection to our spirit, and our spirit is multifaceted. It has multiple different levels of it, right? There's an aspect of our spirit that has never not been in unity. So the more that we come into a daily experience and invitation and practice with engaging and bringing our higher self consciousness into our life, into our decisions, and definitely into our body, into our somatic contraction specifically. And this is what we teach specifically in somatic awakening, is how can you bring that in a specific container of presence, how that's held. We have numerous different principles that really hold that, so that we can actually bring in what I call higher self-witness consciousness, which is witness consciousness in essence on spades, because it's connected to the higher self and the divine. So we can bring that into that thing that is so difficult, that is so painful, that has caused so much hurt and suffering in our life, so that this contraction, wherever it came from, whatever story it's holding, whatever experiences it's holding, can actually ultimately open, surrender, and then receive not just a blessing, but a literal transformation. And so I have a lot of different meditations online for free. If people want to experience this, they can go to my website, Sophia Healing Academy. And would this be a good time for me to share some of the things I have coming up for people? So I also have a lot of events coming up. Part of what has been happening for me, and I kind of mentioned this a moment ago, is that I work with a lot of very sensitive people, a lot of people who really love the planet, love society, love people, love humanity. And they see what's going on. And a lot of people are freaking out, worrying, stressing, especially in the US, everything that's going on. And so I actually had a student and patient of mine the other day say, can you can you please create something for people? Because we really need something. And I really heard that. Not only did I hear it from her words, I heard it from my spirit, from my soul, from my own spiritual activist self, right? I used to teach all about Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and, like non-violence. And how can I be a conduit in this experience? So I have several free classes coming up, as well as a 3-day intensive coming up, specifically to help people work with anything that's holding them back from standing in their freedom, their sovereignty, their truth, who they really are. As I mentioned, I have a free class this Wednesday, 5 p.m. called the Liberation Code, How to Rewire the Not Good Enough Voice. Next week, I have another class, free class, that's coming up called Come Home to Self-Love, Reclaim Worth, Power, and Wholeness. And that is next Wednesday, the 13th at noon Pacific time. Now, the big event that I have coming up that I really want to share with people is the Homecoming. It's a 3-day intensive online event that really helps you take your next steps of transforming whatever is holding you back, stepping into your freedom, your wholeness, your sovereignty, so that you can live aligned with your higher self and step into whatever is yours to do. And again, that could be something that you do or something that you be, right? And so what I'd like to offer, since this is the launch of this podcast, I'd like to offer a deep discount for this 3-day event. And if you go to Sophia Healing Academy, just hover under programs, hit on the Homecoming. The other 2 classes are on there as well, Liberation Code and Come Home to Self-Love. If you go to Homecoming and you register, use the coupon code Homecoming Special, all caps, one word, Homecoming Special, and you'll get in for only $99. Normally, I never teach 3-day events for $99, but we're in a place of need. And so I want to offer this from my heart, my soul, to support others. And again, if you're interested, Sophia Healing Academy, look at the Homecoming and the coupon code to get in for $99. Again, all caps, one word, Homecoming Special.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you. And thank you for providing that discount for anybody who is watching right now. I'm looking forward to checking it out myself. So much of
Yay.
your work is aligned with my work as well. And I feel like that would just be another aspect of what is being integrated into the world. And it's such an important part of us to need to open to integrating that, to allowing ourselves to free up the density that we've gathered over our years of being here, and to be able to release that, as you were talking about, is such a beautiful thing. And the somatic part of it is such an important piece. We can work on the spiritual understanding, and we can work on getting rid of our thoughts and understanding that they're just experiences, but the body holds so much of our experience. And so as we are working on this process, we have to clear it from the body too. And so I love that you're doing this work and you're bringing in the mystical, you're bringing in the somatic, and combining that so that we truly can have this holistic healing experience that can move us into being our divine selves. So
Yeah,
thank you so
you're
much.
you're so very welcome. I work with so many people that are very sensitive, very intuitive. They desire to step into awakening. They desire to step into higher levels of manifestation. And that has been me. That's me as well, right? And so receiving this incredible gift from the Christ family and many, many others of how to actually transform the density so that then we can step into the awakening, step into the ascension, step into, the next level of evolution of who we really are. It's all connected. We can't have this without having this, right? And a lot of people will just heal, but then they'll stop at that place, some level of healing, right? And so to me, it feels like we're in this rebirthing time, even if it looks dark, right? We're in a rebirthing time. So we have to continue to remember that. And that's actually one of the reasons why I made the homecoming on we started on March 21st on the spring equinox, March 21st to the 23rd. But in this rebirthing time, we have to bring all of us along, including the parts of us that hold us down. Because if we have a huge awakening experience out here, but we still have this density holding us back, that's saying that we're not good enough, guess what's going to happen? This awakening is going to be pulled back, because this is the rate limiting step. Our density will not let us through the gates of awakening until it's transformed. But once it's transformed, we can usher all of us through the gateways of awakening and ascension.
Beautiful. I absolutely love that. And it's just such a beautiful part of this journey. So thank you very, very much. And thank you for being part of this first live introduction to For the Love of Mystics. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm so glad that you were able to be here. I've loved this conversation. And so thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Michael, thank you.
Well, thank you. It's really been great. And as time goes on now, we're going to be introducing more specific things about individual mystics as we go forward. So this has created a good base on a personal level. And Beyond Being Human is a service-led kind of enterprise or adventure. And shall I mention now? Actually, do you want to talk a little bit about membership, Jennifer?
Sure.
Or
Yeah, let's do that. So why don't you share the page and then we can talk a little bit about it. So Beyond Being Human is an amazing platform that is open to membership, but there's a lot of really great information on there. Becoming a member allows you to step into this phenomenal world of learning and growth. There's all kinds of experiences. You're going to see tons of different shows. There's explorations with Tanis Coughlin, and she speaks with people who've had different experiences, and she speaks with people who are bringing all of this knowledge and insight into their environments in the world. As you can see here, there's benefits with the support and discussion groups. So I host a group with Tanis once a month, and there's several other groups that are being hosted by absolutely phenomenal people that bring beautiful insights and skills to their groups, and they hold space for us on this journey. So as we're going through the awakening process, there's going to be opportunities to come together in a very private setting where you can share your experience and share with others who are also going through their own experiences, and we can hold space for one another and allow each other to have a safe environment to be able to talk about what it is that we're going through. And there's all different times and days, so check out the website and you'll be able to see who's offering when, and you can even sign up on the website. Michael, if you want to scroll down, you'll see that there's the sign up sheets down at the bottom, so you'll see are your hosts here. And amazing. And then below is where you can register, so you can check out all of the different options and opportunities and join us for that. And as Michael shared, there's also, as you're popping through, I'm trying to stay in line with where you're at. So the new members page. So if you want to scroll down for that, there's, yeah, perfect. So you can see the support groups are there, and then Exploring Crystal Skulls. Now that's a course that you can, as a member, take a look at. That's really informative, goes into just a lot of different experiences that were there. So I think it says 80 minutes interview there with Joshua. And so you'll get to hear all about the experience with crystal skulls
And
and
I
the
should
mystical.
mention,
Go
yeah,
ahead, Michael.
I should mention that that course I'm giving away generally for people who would like to become lifetime members. And there's all sorts of other gifts that I give for new members as well. We've just in the last few days had a couple of new members. And I also wanted to show you this page, which is a good place to start. If you're coming here and you feel like, wow, there's so much, I don't know what's going on. This is where you find out what's going on. It's a page called beyondbeinghuman.org/inviting-new-members. And it cycles through 60 slides, all about the project, gives you a good introduction to everything that's going on and some of the people that are involved. We've got many, many different people. And when you go on the website, click the Connect Index tab at the top, and there's various categories of special guests and flight crew, as I call them, like Jennifer, and all of the support group people now are bundled into the flight crew. And yeah, and there's Melissa and there's Adam. So they're going to be key people to the documentary that we're working on, hopefully to start shooting this year. And yeah, I mean, Adam's just an amazing guy, and he's got courses as well. And look, I better stop this because I could just go on and on and on.
You'll show them all before they get to come to the website.
That's right. Yeah, there'll be nothing to see you later. But yeah. Anyway, I mean, there's much to explore. Just quickly, last page. And yeah, all of these great people who've been part of previous events and interviews and conversations. And we do a show every Christmas, a couple of hours, and introduce everyone through that and tell what they're doing, and yeah, sort of sharing all of that. And really, Beyond Being Human is a platform for people to find out about other people's goings on, and we're all aligned, and it's all very kind of heartfelt. And yeah, and one of the other bylines, so I've got 3 bylines that I've been using till I changed to Open Source Awakening. So the first one that I forgot to mention earlier is exploring our multidimensional nature. And really, nearly everything that we're doing relates to that. And that also was one of the early urges that I got. Like, raise the awareness, start educating people about all of these different realms. And it's incredible in my discussions to find out how many people don't even believe that they've got a soul. It's sort of like, wow, okay, where do I go with that? Anyway, so yeah, look, you can explore all of this. We've got the Mystics page, which is going to be growing. And there's another section called the Virtual Realm Exchange, which has all of the 12 topics in there. And I'll end on this page. And so I won't read all of that, but you get the idea. So these are the sorts of things that we're dealing with in personal practice. And these are the main topics that we're exploring: angels, extraterrestrials, star children, hybrids, experiences. Like, people are having all sorts of experiences, not just ETs, but angels and all sorts of other kinds of things like paranormal. And shamanism is another great other world entirely that all relates to our ancient spirituality. ecology. I'm starting to work on that, bringing in some people for that. And ultimately, consciousness. It's all about consciousness, man, is what Grant Cameron's been saying for decades. And finally, mystics. And yeah. So let me stop sharing. Thank you all again so much. And Curtis, off in the wings. I've suggested that his offsider, Chelsea, might come and do just a specific section on Swedenborg, and we'll hopefully be able to announce that at some point too. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Michael, very much for sharing about Beyond Being Human. Thank you again, Melissa. Thank you, Curtis, wherever you are now. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I feel very blessed to have been able to have this experience with you.
And also, just to mention, it would be wonderful if people like what we're doing to click the like and subscribe on the YouTube channel and the notify bell ding. And we're going to have more and more things happening, actually. There's a number of conversations being lined up, and we've got another Mystics video to be released fairly soon, hopefully. Do you want to talk about her, maybe? Lara Atwood.
Yeah, I was able to have an interview, absolute privilege, with Lara Atwood, who does the Religion of the Sun, and she shared all about her practices. And so we're going to be releasing that very soon as well. So not a live recording like this, but it will be released shortly, and you'll get to hear all about that. We go through the whole map and look at all of the different kind of teachings and how they come together. Again, as Melissa and I were talking about, that oneness, looking at how all of these things are interconnected, all of the different religions of the world, the interconnectedness of them, and how, as always, when we get down to the mystical of everything, it is just one. And so that's a beautiful thing that's going to come through with that interview.
Yeah, and also just wanted to mention, if people would like to donate, this is the page. The short link is bit.ly/paybbh. And that's probably on the show notes on the video as well. And I'm going to start sharing the credits if everyone's finished talking or needs to go to the loo or something like that. And I'd love to hear from people in the comments too, please. What would you like to see more of? How did you like this show? All of those sorts of things. So thank you again. And I'm going to roll credits, and just a thing, it's probably good to keep the recording going, and I'll end the live after the credits are rolled, if I can find them, hopefully. There we go. Okay, sharing screen. So complex, all this technology. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. And thank you. I'm going to